Live from the Export Beer Garden Studios, you're listening to the BYC, where miracles never cease. After being pumped by the English in the first two T20s, the plucky Kiwis somehow fought back to draw the series. I'll be honest, the first two games were so ugly I was almost disinclined to watch the next two. Indeed, the chat on the BYC Messenger app was poisonous, with Dylan Cleaver well and truly drawing the knives from the scabbard. But fight back they did, and full credit to them. Spirits were further buoyed by the news the great man himself, Kane Williamson, will be fit and ready for the World Cup. So we look with renewed enthusiasm towards the one-day series against the English and, of course, ultimately, the Cricket World Cup. And Dylan,
yes,
just Jason, on that chat on our app there, I think your comment about the New Zealand side, T20 side, was something along the lines of this New Zealand batting lineup is all kinds of wrong. Yeah. And at that time, I fully agreed with you. What was your thought behind that?
My thought was that if Conway and Mitchell didn't get runs, they were no chance. And do you know what happened in the series?
Yeah.
They did not get a run between them.
Yes.
They were dreadful. I actually, look, full credit, as Sean Fitzpatrick would say, I saw no way back in that series for them.
Yeah.
2-0 down, and not just 2-0 down, absolute pants pulled down, and, you know, what's his name, Peter Roebuck, paddling your bare behind with a cricket bat. That was that kind of thrashing.
Yeah.
But somehow they pulled it out of the fire, and I didn't see it coming.
It was an absolute spanking, those first two games, Paul Ford, and along the lines of what Dylan was saying there, I looked at our batting lineup and I just went, that is ugly. That is ugly. And I was trying to come to terms with it in my mind, and I was thinking, why is it ugly? And for me, my feeling about it was there's just too many hit and misses in there. There's just too many sort of random dashes. But as Dylan has just alluded to, full credit to them, mate. They came back.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, it did look ugly. I think it was Tim Southey, I'm pretty sure, who said that it was rotten. They'd played rotten, and it did have certainly an experimental feel, that batting order. But it was just horrible cricket. And it's quite a weird series. Obviously, we're in the wash-up. It's another tied series, another tied event between New Zealand and England, and God, haven't there been a few of those over the last wee while?
Can I tell you, Paul, just before you move on from that, I have done the boundary countback for the series, and England won the series in a tiebreaker, 79 boundaries to 75.
No, we're not going to have any of that bollocks, Dylan Cleaver. No, it was a tied series.
But yeah, it was weird. It was interesting that there were 4 just blowout games. I mean, there were no thrilling run chases. It was just complete obliteration every single time. Dylan also on the chat, when he was saying how useless New Zealand was, he did also want to do some digging, I think, into when New Zealand had a period of such poor performance in the T20s. It's actually pretty recent. Back to November 2019, we lost 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 in a row to England and India. To be fair, 2 of those were tied and super over games against India, but we have been in a longer period of losses than 2.
I was thinking more back-to-back hammerings. Like, they were just so brutal, those defeats. I was wondering when the last time New Zealand had put just 2 absolute stinkers together like that.
Yeah, I don't know.
Fair point.
In a series, it does seem pretty unusual. It does seem like this is quite a resilient team that when they get whacked, they bite back, and I guess that's what's happened here too.
Well, let's look at that first T20. Of course, New Zealand 139 for 9. Phillips, the only man of consequence there, with 41 off 39. Luke Wood 3 for 37. Bryden Cast 3 for 23. Darwin Milan 54 and Brook 43 no out. Southey 1 for 25. Just a disgraceful match.
36 balls to spare.
6 overs to spare. I vomited in my mouth a little bit. I was just like, oh, dear God. And Southey it was interesting, actually, in the aftermatch. He was sort of saying, we got the pitch wrong. And I was like, come on, fella. No. But that was an absolute pantsing, Dylan.
Yeah, it was. Yeah. Tough to watch that one.
Yeah, really tough. Then in the second one, 198 for the English in New Zealand, 103 Paul Ford, Bairstow 86, Brook 67. And I tell you what, man, Brook, God, I'm a fan. He's a phenomenal player to watch. Sodhi 2 for 44, Seifert 39, Atkinson 4 for 20, and Rashid 2 for 18. Paul Ford.
Yeah, we were always on target to sort of chase down, I don't know, about 150, something like that. But in the end, just a massive blowout, and England just rampaged away. That partnership between Bairstow and Brook was great to watch. If you were anyone other than a New Zealand cricket fan, I'd suggest it was cracking batting at Manchester. But it just felt like that run chase. We just never got on top of it, and it always felt like we were at least 50 runs behind, chasing our tails, and in the end, I didn't say capitulated, but just kind of kept redlining it. I mean, was it every single catch was caught in the deep, it seemed?
Yeah. Well, look, Paul, as a cricket obsessive that you are, and a massively passionate cricket fan, mate, what does Paul Ford do after 2 in a row like that? Do you hit the bottle? I mean, do you go back to bed and just take a sickie from work? I mean, how do you cope with that sort of scenario?
I actually think I'm quite unbearable for about 3 hours. So, I go out for a walk in the hills, kick a few trees, Jase.
Yeah.
And then come back and start doing some cricket research and try and work out whether I should be as gloomy as what I am. At the end of the day, it is just T20. And I think this series does feel very much like an entree series before the starter, which is the one day, is before the main course, which, of course, is the World Cup.
Yeah. Well, and you're right, too. And I shouldn't really say this, but there was that element, Dylan, for me of, well, they're just T20s. But, I'm a Black Caps fan, and it was painful, those first 2 games.
Yeah, and I'm also intrigued by Harry Brook. You mentioned before you're a fan.
Yes.
England have now decided that the World Cup squad they named was in fact provisional, and they're going to bring Harry Brook into that. Surprise, surprise.
It was hilarious watching Matthew Mott talking about that. He honestly said the word provisional about 5 or 6 times. I mean, it was quite hard case. He kept talking about how the guys that are in the team have got the first crack at it, but the squad's not been finalised. We're just going to monitor how players are going, and we'll do some fine tuning if we need to. There's a lot of cricket before we play the World Cup, so I mean the door is very, very ajar, and it feels like maybe we'll talk about the one-day series in a bit, but some of those English top-order players are under pressure from their own man, for sure.
But then, miracle of miracles, the Kiwis turn it around. That third result, New Zealand 202 for 5, England all out for 128, Allen 83, finally get some runs. Phillips 69, Atkinson 2 for 31, Butler 40, Jamieson 3 for 23, Sodhi 3 for 33, Southey 2 for 30. A good all-round bowling effort there, Dylan.
Yeah, it was, and this is probably a dodgy confession here, but I did not watch this one live.
Right.
I had given up on the series by then, and I thought I'll just watch the highlights the next morning. Lo and behold, look at the old phone and think, hang on. Like my mind worked like it was flipped around.
Yes.
I was thinking, they've got this wrong. England has smashed 200 again. What's going on here? So I had to watch this in full in a replay, and New Zealand are very good, perhaps highlighting the fickle nature of 2020 cricket to some degree. But as you mentioned, Allen, it's flogging a dead horse here, but we know he can be a match winner. It's just whether one every 4-match series is acceptable. Yeah,
what kind of strike rate do we want from the guy, I guess, is the question. And actually, I just want to touch on something that Dylan just said there, Paul Ford, and it does kind of, when you look at the series, it does sort of touch upon the fickle nature of T20s. You know what I mean? How they can sort of turn very quickly. And for me, for that reason, they lack gravitas.
But maybe not drama, right? It is interesting. It does feel like if one player does one thing for sort of 45 minutes, then that can take the game away, and you just hope that it's your guy on that day, whether it's a batsman or a bowler. And in that third game it was Fennell, in the game before it was Johnny Bairstow, the game before that it was probably Harry Brook. It does feel like there is just such a there's such a short amount of time for the momentum to be arrested and turned back in your favour that one person can make a massive difference on the day, and that's kind of what this series feels like it's come down to.
It's kind of like the NBA in some ways like that, isn't it? You can play a really good team game, and yet LeBron James just goes off his nut and wins the game for the Lakers.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah. The individual shines. That fourth result, of course, England 175 for 8. New Zealand got there with 4 down in the 18th over. Bairstow 73, Santner 3 for 30, Sodhi 2 for 31. This time a good all-round batting performance from the New Zealanders. Seifert 48, Phillips 42 and Chapman 40, Paul.
Yeah, look, I think for England, Johnny Bairstow looked $1 million in this game. He looked so good, but the rest of their batters just really struggled to get momentum going, and it felt like they just kind of got bogged down. They got stuck, and I guess that when you look at the statistics, Sodhi, Santner, and Ravindra taking 6 for 68 from 10 overs. I think that is England have been bogged down in the last 2 T20s and really seemed to struggle against the spin from the New Zealanders. Was it spin? I'm not really sure. It was sort of a mix of spins and sliders and long hops and wrong-ins and zooters. It was all sorts, and some pretty horrendous deliveries got wickets, but certainly some wild variation. The ball just slowing up, and as I say, only Bairstow seemed to be the man that worked the conditions out and batted to those conditions.
Yeah, great stuff. Well, looking at it all overall, and we've already kind of touched on this, fellas. Obviously, we were looking for Conway and Mitchell as our 2 most solid players, as you mentioned earlier in the podcast there, Dylan. They shat their pants a little bit and didn't have a great series. And the people that are... and Phillips was the main man, 173 runs at 153. Allen next best with 123 at 154, but of course he scored nearly all of his runs in one dig.
Yeah,
and I don't.
Maybe that's all right in T20 cricket. Maybe 1 out of every 4 is all right. Yeah,
I guess if you got one of them doing it, I don't know. I seem to have some kind of mental block about Phillips and the way he plays,
or Allen.
Both of them, but. I don't know, Phillips, but he's been actually probably, in many respects, our most consistent performer in the T20 series. You know what I mean? Yet I still find myself unconvinced by him, and I'm not sure why.
I like him in T20s because he's one of those few guys that can hit from ball 1 down the order. Even Mitchell can't do that. Like, we know Mitchell's a good player, but he looks like the kind of player who really needs 6 or 7 balls before he's effective. Strangely enough, he looks more positive in Test cricket when he first comes to the wicket.
Yeah.
He looks like he can hit the ball out of the middle of the bat from ball 1. Maybe he tries to force it a little bit more in T20. But no, I think Phillips is I think he's almost born into this format.
Yeah, I guess so. I guess in many respects that's it, isn't it, Paul Ford? He is your kind of consummate T20 player.
Absolutely, and I mean, it's amazing that you've said all of that, and we haven't mentioned his fielding. Obviously, a staggeringly good fielder as well. But
true that.
Career average of 32, strike rate of 146 across 63 games. I think he's top 10, maybe sort of heading up towards Ross Taylor in terms of the number of runs scored in T20 cricket for New Zealand, Jase. So I think you're being a little bit unfair.
Yeah, I think I am.
I think it's obviously it's your call, and it's an interesting observation, but I think he's earned that now. I felt a bit like that early doors with him, but I feel like he's put in enough consistent performances over the last couple of years in particular that I'm feeling pretty safe with him out there now.
I'll say it now in front of both of you. I'm wrong about Phillips, and the point is, I don't know why. I guess it's just the way he bats that I don't relate to so much, but then again, I'm hardly a dasher myself. So, but yeah, I think he is the consummate T20 player for sure.
There was one shot he hit today, and I don't want to get too granular on this, but there was one shot that he hit that, because you see him as that kind of guy that crouches down, he clears his front hip and he smashes over mid-wicket. But the guy, Rayan Ahmed, was bowling to him. He bowled probably the best ball he bowled. Phillips just leant back and slashed it behind point for 4. The guy on the deep point boundary hardly had to move, and he had no chance of getting it. And it was just like, man, he can play. You know, I think sometimes because 2020 forces you to be that hitter and that kind of slogger, that you sometimes forget how good a cricketers these guys are.
Yeah,
and
sure.
that single shot, I was sitting there this morning and went, wow, that's a pure batter there.
Yeah,
It showed a bit of touch, Dylan, and a bit of finesse. And I think when we're comparing, and I know it's a little bit unfair, different jobs, but comparing Phillips to Finn Allen, it does feel like Finn Allen is he's just there to be the bludgeoner, right? And there was a bit of chat on the commentary about him kind of, he needs to learn to take a single after he's hit a 4. He's not going to do that. That's not what he's been charged with doing. He's going to try and hit 6 sixes every over, and it's going to come off, as you say, 25% of the time.
Well, keeping in a similar vein here, Paul, are you comfortable with Seifert and Chapman as regulars?
Yeah, Wanganui's finest, Tim Seifert. I mean, average of 27 and a strike rate of 137 across 50 games. It's a decent record, but yeah, I think it feels like he's a sort of next cab off the rank if someone's injured or we need to fill a gap. A very flexible guy. I was interested that he took the gloves. I wasn't sure if I saw anywhere why Conway wasn't keeping. I don't know if there was something going on there or they were just giving Seifert a go. I really like Chapman. I think he's shown that he can do a job, and it's a little bit like what you were saying about Glenn Phillips. We've got to give these guys the opportunities to get out there and win games for us. But Chapman has barely put a foot wrong in the last couple of tours. He was superb on the subcontinent, and now he's done some good things in this series too. So yeah, I think Chapman ahead of Seifert in terms of if you're ranking guys in terms of coming into that T20 team.
I can give you an answer to that. I can tell you why Conway wasn't keeping today. It's because he wasn't in the 11.
Well, I knew that one, but he didn't keep in the series, which is really weird.
Yes. Now, no sooner than Tim Southey sets a world record, then Sodhi sets off after it. 8 wickets for the series at a economy rate of 8.64. Next best Santner with 5 at 8.28.
Yeah, Sodhi's interesting, actually. As Paul mentioned before, this was a series where spin took a lot of wickets bowling absolute junk balls.
Yes.
And it's kind of why I'd quite like to see Eddie Ashok not play a lot of T20Is early in his career, because I think it's a really effective way of bowling. And look, it looks junk to us, but there's obviously method behind the madness, right? These are good players. Mitchell Santner can, to steal the line from Daniel Vittori, which apparently never happened, but Mitchell Santner could land it on a 10-cent piece if you put it down the wicket. So they've kind of figured out a way of not letting batters get into their rhythm, and that's by bowling a mix of long hops, googlies. Every single ball's different. I would hate to see Eddie Ashok, who looked pretty good actually, the chances he got. I'd hate to see him get into that sort of pattern. I'd like to see him play more first-class cricket, more red ball cricket, honing those real key skills. But there's 4 bowlers that are miles ahead of everyone else in T20I wickets. Tim Southey, our own world record holder, 144. Shakib Al Hasan is not far behind, 140. Rashid Khan, who's probably going to fly past everyone, on 130. But Ish Sodhi, 126. So New Zealand have got 2 of the 4 most prolific T20I bowlers.
Good stuff. Good stuff.
That's amazing. And I was saying before in that the fourth game, it was 6 for 68 off the spinners, and in the third game it was 4 for 53 off 7. So combined, you're talking about 120 runs from 17 overs, and they lost 10 wickets. England, that is, I said lost momentum, but that's battling, floundering, struggling, getting choked to death. Guys like Milan and so on, they just really couldn't get hold of any of those guys.
Yeah, well, so we head off now for the one-day series. The first game at Cardiff this Friday at 11:30 p.m. Second game in Southampton. Games 3 and 4 in London, but we'll cover those off next week. The squad for this series is Latham as the skipper, Allen, Conway, Nichols, Phillips, Young, Mitchell, Ravindra, Santner, Bolt, Ferguson, Henry, Southey, Jamieson, Milne.
Okay, so the ins for this one-day series are Latham, Nichols, Young and Bolt come in, and the outs from the T20Is are Chapman, Seifert, Sodhi, McConkey go home, and obviously Jimmy Neesham had already withdrawn for paternity leave. I'm just wondering, looking at that squad, I'm sure Stead has most of the World Cup places locked down. Just who in that squad I'll start with you, Jase, actually, do you think is fighting to earn a place on that trip to India?
Look, I've got to say Allen, but then...
No, I reckon they've already invested so much in him. I don't think they can turn back from that.
Well, I don't see anyone particularly vulnerable there, given the circumstances. Obviously, Kane, steady the ship, is going to come back in. But once again, I kind of look at that batting lineup and I have my doubts about it, though I think Latham adds a bit of stability in it. But, yeah, I think that's probably about right.
Nicholls, Young?
Well, but once again, you talk about, investing in players. Like, Nicholls, they've invested in hugely, and we've waxed lyrical about that over a period of time. How do you feel about the side, Paul?
Yeah, I was mucking around with like who I thought the first 11 was, and Dylan, you just touched on it there. I think there's a bit of a duel there between Young and Nicholls, assuming Allen and Conway are opening. That's sort of what I've done there, and then Young versus Nicholls in that middle order. Then Mitchell, Latham, Phillips, Santner feel like kind of locks to me. Bolt at the bottom, Southey as well, Henry as well. And then, Santner as well. And then kind of Jamieson versus Ravindra maybe, or do they throw a Lockie Ferguson in and just go for all-out pace? Yeah, but I think, from a batting point of view, I think it's Young versus Nicholls kind of auditioning for that middle order slot, which is free until Williamson comes back. And then I guess it's the all-rounder really, the Jamieson versus Ravindra decision.
Yeah, I don't put Jamieson in that frame. I would be more inclined to say, if there's some doubts, it would be between Milne and Ravindra.
Yeah, I love Jamieson. Love the way he bowls in red ball cricket. I'm still not convinced in white ball cricket, and he's struggled in India in the past. He struggled in the IPL, didn't he?
Yes.
Ravindra is interesting. They look like they're trying to force big hitting into him, and by playing him down the order in T20s, making him, be a little bit more expansive,
but more of a Moeen Ali type player, really.
I'd love to actually understand what they're thinking about his future is, because we've, I guess, looked at him as a red ball, top of the order, part-time spinner. Perhaps they see a completely different future for him.
Yeah. Interesting. England, well, hang on. There is a Harry Brook is now in the picture, isn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, no, he's not playing in this ODI series, though.
Oh, right. Okay, for the World Cup, yes.
You've got Milan, you've got Jason Roy is really the guy that's kind of, I guess, on notice for England. And then, Harry Brook absolutely breathing down their necks. That's the thing. They've kind of selected their World Cup squad for this series and said, this is the World Cup squad. And then, literally this morning, Matthew Mott was kind of going through all of those sort of caveats and asterisks and so on, making it pretty clear that Harry Brook was not only knocking on the door but ready to go, and that the players that were for this series needed to perform. So you'd expect that England would be picking very close, if not their best 11. I think that they'll be getting very close. They'll be. This is them confirming their World Cup team really over the next couple of weeks. They've got a bunch of bowlers that have not bowled for a hell of a lot international cricket of late. So, pretty underdone, I think, from a bowling point of view.
I seriously cannot get my head around the whole Harry Brook thing. I mean, for me, he's almost your first pick. That they're even considering not having him in the side is utterly ridiculous to me. But anyway, hey... But on great and big news, as mentioned at the top here, Kane Williamson will be going to the World Cup, but he might not be available for the opener, but he will be selected. Thank God for that, Dylan Cleaver.
Yeah, thank God. I think he's going to talk to us right now.
Yeah, obviously really exciting, really pleasing to sort of be at the stage that I'm at now, to be selected in the squad and still a month to go before the first game, which is all important time to keep improving.
Thanks, mate.
Yeah.
You're still going.
A little bit more sort of change of direction stuff. The running's sort of progressing quite nicely as well, and it's really still day by day in terms of how the knee is feeling after the increase in load, and kind of whether to push again or perhaps let it settle a little bit before we go on to that next step. So yeah, it's a grey period, but there's been really, really good progress up until this point, and I'm certainly hoping that continues. Firstly, it's really exciting to be named in the squad, and the next month is really key in what that looks like. So it's putting in the work. It's all the training and all those sorts of things, which it has been quite motivating going and putting in the work and seeing some of those little rewards and progress that is required in terms of targeting a specific match. I think it's just still more about being fit and ready as soon as possible, and certainly there's been some really good signs so far. So yeah, look, it's been a really interesting journey so far, and met a lot of great people that have shared their experiences, and also had a lot of support from my team at home, and also whilst I've been away as well. So it's just a process. It's a path to walk, and it's been nice to see the progress that we've seen so far, and we're just wanting it to continue and keep sort of pushing forward with it. And a lot of it comes down to some of those quite intricate parts to the leg that you've never considered before until you experience an injury like this. So it's breaking those down, and graft sites and muscles around the knee, around the ACL, that are really important in terms of a playing perspective. So yeah, but it's been great. A lot of help along the way.
Thanks, mate. Great news, eh?
Oh, could he sound any more excited?
No.
He was fizzing.
Man. Is he finished yet?
Process, a path, a journey.
Yeah, but look,
religious.
Not just because he's our greatest batsman of all time, but also the experience that he brings to the side and so forth. Invaluable, fellas.
Absolutely, and not available for the game against England, but it's a pretty useful draw after that. We play Netherlands, Bangladesh, then Afghanistan, so quite a nice way for him to potentially ease in. It's amazing to think how well he went in that last World Cup. I mean, he's obviously a colossus, 578 runs at an average of 82. Amazingly though, rabbit hole, Shakib Al Hassan scored more runs than him. He's averaged 87 in that Cricket World Cup, 606 runs. Jeez, he can play.
Do you think they've kind of led? I almost felt like they started teasing this news too far out, like a couple of months ago, and I think they probably got to the point now where they thought, hey, we can't put another video out of him having throwdowns from his daughter or in the nets or something like that. We've actually got to say something soon. So
yeah, get it out.
Yeah,
quite possibly. Hey, Corey Anderson into the Big Bash, the 2023-24 season with the Hobart Hurricanes, selected by none other fellas than Ricky Ponting.
Knows a good player when he sees it, Ricky.
Yes, well, he is a bloody good player.
He is.
And he just kind of disappeared on us.
Yeah, it's weird, isn't it? When you think he seems like he's been around forever. He's only 32, Corey Anderson.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, Ricky Ponting, head of strategy for the Hurricanes, he said he's the forgotten man of cricket, and he kind of is. 5 years since he played for New Zealand, so yeah, it's going to be interesting.
People forget New Zealand do not win that semi-final at Eden Park against South Africa without Corey Anderson. I know Grant Elliott's the hero and Baz is the hero, and rightfully so, but Corey Anderson's role in that was pivotal.
Yeah.
And like if you ask even a cricket fan to name the 11 that played that game, a lot of them would miss out Corey Anderson.
Totally. Hey, New Zealand are holding their own into the second test after a stunning first test win, Paul Ford.
Yeah, amazing. It was they absolutely rolled Australia for 127 in that fourth innings, and it was pretty remarkable given they were out themselves for about less than 150 on the first day. So, yeah, an absolute hiding, 225-run victory. The hero of the day was Scott Kugelheim, 85 ball ton. What did he get? 9 wickets or something? Yeah.
Yeah.
I did notice that the Herald confidently stated that the pivotal figure in the match was Sean Solier.
I did actually, to be fair, I did see Cam Bancroft, the Australian Ray captain, said that there was a really good crack in the pitch that Sean Solier just kept hitting. He said he was offering a little bit and that he was tough work given he was moving it off the wicket and in the air. So, yeah, maybe there was something in that too.
Great stuff. Jesse Ryder, Chris Gale and Monty Panesar walk into a bar. What does each of them do?
A bit of context for this. Jesse Ryder's been playing in the Masters T10 in the US alongside such luminaries as Chris Gale. And there's a great photo actually that's been shared on our WhatsApp channel by Paul of Chris Gale, Monty and Jesse together. And it just did remind me of one of the great stories of all time. We know about World Boss, right? And when he went to the Big Bash League, he put his foot in it when he tried to chat up the on-field interviewer. We know about Jesse's many travails. But are we familiar with Monty Panesar's greatest moment?
No.
Can I fill you in? Okay.
Not good.
He was playing for Sussex, okay, and they went out. They went out for a night on the tiles. It was a Sunday night in Brighton, I believe. And first of all they went to a vodka bar. Monty states very clearly he didn't even want to go out, but he was invited out and he felt like it was a good team building opportunity. So he went to a vodka bar. First mistake he wrote. Second mistake was having far too many of the vodkas. Then they went on to a nightclub called Sploosh. And it didn't take long at this nightclub before a bouncer decided that Monty was in no fit state to be there, so they escorted him out. The nightclub sat under this kind of promenade, typical English seaside promenade. Monty walked up these steps to the promenade, walked along it, and noticed the bouncer that had kicked him out was standing below him. So decided to, in his words, the bouncer who had thrown me out was standing right beneath the balcony, and as I was absolutely hammered, I thought I'd get some revenge by tinkling over the edge. All hell broke loose.
Yeah.
They chased him into a pizza bar.
4:13 a.m. on a Monday morning. What a way to start the week.
Don't mess with bouncers, man. Just don't go there. Don't go there.
That is an ominous group of people, though. I mean,
it is.
You've got the Jesse Ryder, the whole massive CV there. I mean, if there's a stripper pole like at Chris Gale's house in the middle of that bar, and then Monty Panesar gets, I wonder what he's drinking on the lagers from the sounds of it. Look out if you're a bouncer in particular.
Yeah.
There was a ghostly fourth figure in that photo. Do we know who that is?
No.
Hopefully security.
Yeah.
Hopefully not a bouncer. Did he look wet?
He looks South African, actually.
Right now, it's time for one of your favourite segments of the podcast, Paul Ford's News or Ruse.
Three bits of news from the cricketing week.
Hang on.
Oh.
What's the problem here, Dylan Cleaver? What's going on?
Not playing.
Tanty. We're having a tanty.
Come on, mate. Jeez.
All right, come on. Go then.
Jason Hoyte. Just to remind everybody, Dylan's throwing a tantrum because Jason Hoyte comfortably won.
Thank you, mate.
Man of some amazing knowledge. Item number one, Martin Guptill blasted a 58-ball century in the CPL this week, just as New Zealand was getting pumped to bits by England. In the first T20, Guptill was man of the match playing for the Trinbago Knight Riders. Got 100 not out of 58 balls with 9 sixes, 40 balls to score the first 50, 18 to score the next 50, and brought it up his ton in the 20th over. I'll take that any day of the week, he said. It ended a string of low scores for Guptill, who hasn't passed 20 in a T20 since March this year. Despite the ton, he went undrafted in the initial phase of contracts for the Big Bash League this summer too. He had a disappointing campaign with the Renegades last summer, 165 runs in 11 knocks and a strike rate of at an underwhelming 107 FYI, this is definitely not the Ruse. He was replaced by Quinton de Kock in that draft this week, who is now going to make himself unavailable to play for South Africa against India in an international white ball series in South Africa in December. So, the fragmentation of cricket continues. Number 2, cricket is facing mounting criticism for failing to follow other sports and tightening women's sports protections after a transgender player will make her international debut this week. Daniel McGahey, an Australian-born player, has become the first transgender cricketer to play an official T20 international representing Canada. The 29-year-old moved to North America in February 2020 and transitioned to a woman in November the same year, meaning she has met the ICC's transgender guidelines. However, with tougher rules now in place for the likes of cycling, rowing and swimming, leading campaigners said cricket should have considered the broader potential safety risk. Sharon Davies, who has been at the forefront of campaigns to protect the integrity of women's sports, said the situation is outrageously irresponsible. So there we go. Pretty controversial selection over there in Canada. Saw how many people were at that game? None. 0 people watching that game. Number 3, the world's heaviest cricketer, 140 kg, Raheem Cornwall, who runs a bit of a Biggie Smalls vibe for me, has hammered a massive ton in the CPL too, just like Guppy. He's 6'5", and everyone's just always talks about how big he is, and rightly so. Brilliantly, he said that he's been eating quite right and that he can't change his body structure. I'm a big guy, but I put in the work. I don't try and get too bogged down. Ironically, of course, he did retire hurt straight after scoring his century, despite only running 2 runs in his century, plundering 98 runs in boundaries before receiving assistance from the physio in the 16th over and waddling off the park. There we go. Guppy, transgender Danielle, or 140 kg West Indian.
Don't think it's story 2 because I was reading that. That is actually really interesting. That what happens when you get your first really fast bowling transgender athlete? Tricky. I'll go for I have no idea, actually. I straight up admit I've got no idea this week, but I'm going to go for Raheem Cornwall on a hunch that there must have been more than 2.
Oh, that's what I was going for too. Raheem there was more than 2 singles.
Oh, well, if you were going for that as well, it's obviously been fed to you.
What?
Joe Jury's just actually texted me from production, and he's had a crack at it as well. And so all 3 of you have picked this correctly. So I think that means it's a Ranfurly Shield situation, and it stays at Jason Hoyte's house.
Thank you.
Because he only plundered, to be fair, 88 runs in boundaries.
Yes. And actually, on that, Dylan, I just read about that again today.
Yeah, okay.
Well, and I put it in the WhatsApp group, so I was trying to...
It cannot be... God. Anyway, hey, what's happening in Violence Corner, Paul?
Paul Ford's Cricket Violence Corner.
Great news, Jase. We've had 4 people injured and 7 arrested after a large fight broke out following a cricket match in Leicester. Officers were called to Rushy Fields Recreation Ground at 7:15 on Sunday to reports of 30 men fighting with weapons, including cricket bats, after a dispute in a club cricket game. A dispersal order was in place in the area until the early hours of Monday. The arrested men were aged 25, 26, 26, 27, 29, 32 and 42, and they all remain in custody. Detective Inspector Jenny Tattersall said, "Please be assured that a full investigation is ongoing, and we will, as we continue to establish the circumstances of the incident. And if you've got any CCTV, phone, dashcam or doorbell footage, please get in touch with the Leicestershire Police."
Great stuff, mates. Now, time for your correspondence. Talk me through this here, fellas.
Yes, I can talk you through this.
Yeah, talk us through that, Paul.
Yeah, so every week when the podcast goes out, there's a series of posts that are made by the wonderful crew at the ACC, Joe Jury and Adam Pulmana and Pulmana and so on. And they, on one of our clips last week, there was a comment from a guy called Matt Maynard. And I tell you what, it caught my eye. I thought, oh, this could be the Glamorgan cricket coach. But after a little bit of research, I realised that that was not the case, and it was just a guy called Matt Maynard who works at the bank. Matthew Maynard, of course, scored 24,799 first-class runs and probably is not watching social media footage of the BYC. So that was a little bit of a letdown after a little bit of research.
Brilliant player. Scored a lot of runs for ND in the season he came out.
Yeah, he was a good player.
And Otago, maybe did he have a crack down there? Maybe?
Or was it Otago, not ND?
No, maybe both. No, I think both. Yeah.
Yeah. And actually his son tragically died too. He was forging a career in first-class cricket.
Oh, that's no good. Hey, Paul, if people want to get hold of us, what do they do, mate?
Flick us an email to byc@beigebrigade.co.nz or slide into the DMs on Facebook or the Gram for the Alternative Commentary Collective or the Beige Brigade.
Bloody beautiful. Well, there you go. That brings us to the end of the podcast. What's going on in the bounce, Dylan? There's a lot. We were just talking about it on the big show, actually. God, what a feast, fellas, of sport coming up.
Yeah, I'm going to have to change my sleeping patterns drastically. Maybe even starting this Friday, get the double header, go cricket all through the night.
Yes.
Then the footy, obviously the rugby. Then you got the Wars playing in Australia later Saturday night.
Yeah, Saturday. Yeah, Penrith.
It's just going to be a brutal couple of months of sport.
For your wife.
And I cannot wait. I can't wait, actually. And so there'll be regular bounces during this period. DylanCleaver.substack.com or just Google Dylan Cleaver at the bounce and sign up.
And I can imagine, too, you're a grumpy bastard.
Oh, you've seen me at my worst.
Yeah, I can imagine you being a real, you don't get enough nine eyes and throwing little tanties around the house.
Not enough bobos.
Yeah, good stuff. Hey, thanks for listening to the podcast. We'll be back same time next week. Tell all your mates about it. Till then, see you later.